Welcome, everybody. So, first of all, welcome and Rosh Chodesh, Chodesh Tov. Welcome to the month of Shvat. This week's Joy of Gratitude has been sponsored as a merit for Issar ben Rachel HaKohen, the father of a friend who's in intensive care as a result of Corona. May the learning be a merit for a refuah shlema, a complete and a swift recovery.
Shvat stands for Shenishma B'sorot Tovot. The Rashi Tevot of Shvat.
Very nice.
Shenishma B'sorot Tovot.
Nishma B'sorot Tovot, Shvat. Lovely. Thank you. So I received a message this week from someone who I'm lucky enough to teach, who also watches these sessions, and this is what she wrote from her quarantined room. I've been meaning to tell you this for a couple of months, but ever since I watched your episodes on Asher Yatsa, that the bracha that we say after going to the bathroom, I've gained so much from it. Every time I say it, I try to think of something different in my body to be thankful for, that I hadn't thought of as yet. It's kind of fun thinking of all the different functions and systems and processes that go on. It also helps me to remember to thank Hashem for a pain that went away without noticing, that I normally forget about, since we tend to forget once it's gone. For example, if I was having a stomachache that went away randomly, I'd remember while saying the bracha that I felt better and thank Hashem. I remember you mentioning in class several weeks ago that with COVID here, we should all be so thankful for our sense of smell. I've lost mine now, and I didn't realize how upsetting it would be. I didn't realize how amazing smell is. I got fresh cinnamon muffins delivered to me, and my first instinct was to pick it up and smell it, and I couldn't smell anything. My first instinct when I realized I lost my smell was that I was so grateful it wasn't my taste, but now it's affecting my taste too. It's really crazy how fast you can lose something that was working so perfectly. Now, thank God this young lady is feeling much better. But of course, she makes an important point, and it's a point we've said before, but it needs saying many times. Don't wait to lose something before being grateful for it. Now, a few weeks ago, we started talking about the tremendous blessings in our eyes. We talked about the fact that the cornea needs to be transparent and it needs to be kept moist. And through my time working as an optometrist, I've unfortunately met many people who are suffering from different eye conditions. I've met people who have a central corneal opacity. That means the center of their cornea is cloudy. Or they have some other corneal distortion that greatly reduces their vision. I have patients who have a severe case of dry eyes. That means they live with almost constant discomfort or pain. And they have to regularly instill eye drops to ensure that the corneas do not cloud up and scar. And in my work with low vision, I regularly deal with people who are losing their central vision through something called macular degeneration, which is the most common cause of impaired vision in the Western world. These people are people who struggle to read, they struggle to function, and in my opinion, and probably their opinion too, the worst is they struggle to see their family, and they struggle to recognize their family and their close ones in photos. So why wait to lose something before realizing what we have? Be grateful for it now. Enjoy it and appreciate it while you have it right now. So let's spend a little bit more time focusing on the eye, if you'll allow the pun. And let's go back to talking about the cornea. And this will help us, give us something else to think about as we're saying that blessing as we come out of the bathroom. We talked about the cornea. It needs to be transparent. It's this curved structure that covers the colored part of the eye. It needs to be curved so that the rays of light that are coming towards our eye are then focused correctly at the back of the eye. because if we do not have something curved there, all we would see is a blur. Now, obviously, it needs to be solid, because if it wasn't solid, then every time we blinked, our eyelids would force the cornea to change shape. And that means that if it wasn't solid, every time we blinked, our prescription would change. Could you imagine that? You'd have to have a special pair of glasses every time you blinked, and then after a second, your cornea would get a new shape because it lost its previous shape, and then you'd need a different prescription for that. So obviously it needs to be solid. The problem is, anything that is solid, the fibrous tissue needed to keep something solid makes something opaque. So we've got a problem here. We need it to be transparent, so it needs some sort of fibrous tissue. As soon as it has some fibrous tissue to hold it in place, it's no longer transparent. How's this going to work? Ah, well, listen to this. The cornea is not solid. Instead, there is a chamber behind the cornea, and it is filled with liquid. For those of you who remember your biology classes, it's called the aqueous humor. This liquid is there to keep the cornea taut, to keep it in shape. So there's pressure behind the cornea, keeping it in a bowl shape, and therefore when we blink, it doesn't lose its shape. Oh, but there's a problem with that. You know what the problem is? The problem is that that liquid will slowly over time dissipate, because that's what happens. Liquid gets absorbed into the different organs of the body. So therefore, we have a system inside our eye that is constantly producing new aqueous humor, new liquid, to keep that cornea taut. But then there's another problem, because if more liquid is being produced, then the pressure inside of the eye is going to get higher and higher and higher, and that will damage the nerve at the back of the eye. That's called something called glaucoma, if you've heard of that. So therefore, in order to deal with that problem, there is a very, very intricate around the edge of the iris. There's a very intricate meshwork of drainage channels called the trabecular meshwork that allows the liquid to flow out. So we have a constant production of liquid and a constant outflow of liquid, and that way the pressure inside the eye is kept at a fairly equal rate. The cornea is solid without being opaque. Now, unless you studied this, you would have no idea of these intricate systems that are there so that we can see. I'll give you, maybe we've got a time for one more thing. At the back of this chamber, there is an iris. The iris is what gives our eye color. The role of the iris is to regulate the amount of light we get inside our eye. So when it's dark, our iris opens up and we get a larger pupil to allow more light in. And when it's bright, the iris closes up to reduce the amount of light that we get inside the eye, so that we don't get dazzled. In order to do this, it has two muscles that work against each other. There's something called a sphincter muscle, which is a ring muscle, which when it constricts makes the pupil smaller. And there's something called a dilator muscle, which pulls the iris open when we need the pupil to be larger. At the back of the iris, there is a thin layer, irrespective of the color of your eye. At the back of the iris, the part of the iris you can't see, there is a thin layer of extremely dark pigmented cells. And those cells are there to stop any light leaking through the sides. Because if you had light leaking through the sides, then what would happen is you'd get dazzled, like looking through a windscreen, a dirty windscreen, when the sun is shining directly at you, and you wouldn't be able to see anything. In fact, I know people who, because of a certain condition, those black cells at the back of the iris are being worn away, and light is leaking through, and it's very, very difficult for them. Some of them have to wear special contact lenses that provide an extra black ring there, a contact lens with a black ring on it to sort of block out any of that light leaking through. So here's some more things to think about when you open your eyes in the morning and you see another beautiful day. You can think about all of these wonderful things that Hashem is doing for you, and we've literally just scratched the surface of the eye. I could carry on speaking about the eye for months, and maybe I will again at some point in the future. But the main point here is, let's appreciate what we have when we have it. Let's not wait until we lose it to realize what we had. Thank you, Chodesh Tov, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.